I almost threw the phone into the washing machine. That's the stupid thing I keep remembering. Out of everything that happened afterward, out of all the screaming and crying and years of damage, I still remember standing in our laundry room holding a cheap black phone I had never seen before and thinking, whose is this? Before all of that, my life felt painfully ordinary. I had been married for 11 years. We had 2 kids, a mortgage that stressed us out every month, and routines so predictable I could tell what my wife would say before she said it. She'd complain about traffic. I'd complain about work. We'd argue over bills, laugh at dumb TV shows, sit half asleep beside each other on the couch. Normal life. Maybe boring life. But stable life. My wife Emily and I had known each other since our 20s. I thought I knew every version of her. Every fear, every habit, every insecurity. I trusted her so completely that it never even occurred to me that there could be entire parts of her life I wasn't seeing. It started small, like these things always do when you look back and pretend you could have caught it earlier. Emily began, working late more often. Not dramatically, not in a way that screamed betrayal. Just enough. Enough that dinner was sometimes cold when she got home. Enough that she stopped putting her phone face up on the table. I noticed, but I didn't question it. I told myself she was stressed. That her job had gotten worse. That we were just tired. But there was another shift I couldn't ignore, her reaction to one person. She never liked Daniel. One of her co-workers. She used to call him arrogant and fake polite. I even agreed with her at one point. But suddenly his name stopped being negative. It became neutral. Then absent. Then completely erased from her conversations. That should have been my first real warning sign, but I didn't connect anything. I was too busy believing in the version of my life where nothing like that could happen to us. Looking back, that's what hurts the most. Not the betrayal yet, but how safe I felt right before it. The first real crack wasn't loud. It was stupidly quiet. Emily left her phone charging in the kitchen one night and went upstairs to shower. I remember standing there, half listening to the water running, scrolling on my own phone like I always did. Then her screen lit up. No name. Just a number. The message preview showed. Did he suspect anything today? I froze. It didn't even make sense at first. I thought it was some work thing. Some misunderstanding. But my stomach already knew before my brain caught up. I didn't open it immediately. I just stared at it, like staring harder would change the words. When I finally unlocked her phone, it wasn't even locked differently, which now feels insane. I found a second messaging app hidden in a folder. I still remember the exact feeling in my hands. Cold. Detached. Like I wasn't the one doing it. The conversation wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. It was her and Daniel. And the messages weren't professional. They were careful, intimate, and full of references I didn't understand yet. That was the moment my marriage stopped being something I believed in. I kept scrolling like an idiot who thinks there's a version of the truth that won't hurt as much. There wasn't. At first it was subtle stuff, meetings, cover stories, complaints about me that I wasn't supposed to see. Then it shifted into something worse. Something familiar between them. Inside jokes. Compliments. Late-night messages that didn't pretend to be about work anymore. And then I saw it. A message from her. I hate going home after seeing you. My vision actually blurred. Not dramatically like in movies. Just a slow, sick distortion, like my brain was refusing to process language I understood perfectly. I sat down at the kitchen table without realizing it. Her phone was still in my hand. My own phone buzzed next to me, probably something useless, maybe a work email, but it felt like it belonged to another world. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal yet. It was the realization that this wasn't new. This had structure. Time. Consistency. Something built while I was sitting right next to her every evening, talking about bills and school schedules. I didn't hear her come downstairs. I only noticed when she said my name that I remember her voice before I remember her face. Why are you holding my phone? It wasn't panic. Not immediately. More like annoyance. Like I had interrupted something small and inconvenient. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My throat felt locked, like my body had decided speech was optional. She saw the screen. That changed everything. Her expression shifted so fast it almost didn't look real. Like someone had swapped her face mid-frame. For a second she just stared at me, then at the phone, then back at me again. Where did you get that? She asked. And that question, did something to me. Because it wasn't. What did you see? Or, let me explain. It was control. I finally spoke, but it came out wrong. Flat. Is this real? She didn't answer immediately. She reached for the phone and I pulled it back without thinking. That's when she said his name. Daniel. Not like a confession. Like a correction. Like I was the one who was missing context, not the one whose life was collapsing in real time. The moment she said his name, something in me snapped, not loudly, not explosively, but like a rope finally giving after being stretched too long. I asked her again. Slower this time. How long? She didn't answer at first. She walked past me into the kitchen, like she needed space to think, like I was the one making things difficult by being there. That's when I knew it was real. Because if it had been nothing, she would have reacted faster. Angrier. Confused. Defensive in a simple way. Instead, she was calculating. Not as long as you think, she finally said. That sentence still lives in my head because of how empty it was. It wasn't denial. It wasn't honesty. It was something in between, designed to soften impact. I remember laughing once. Just once. A short, broken sound I didn't recognize as mine. Not as long as I think? I repeated. So there is a long version? She didn't meet my eyes. And in that silence, I understood something worse than betrayal. She had already prepared versions of this conversation in her head long before I ever knew it existed. I asked her to sit down. My voice surprised even me, calm, almost detached. Like I was trying to conduct an interview instead of watching my life collapse. She didn't sit immediately. She poured herself water first. That small act made something in me go cold. Then she sat across from me, finally, like we were negotiating something instead of destroying it. I asked the obvious questions. When? How? Why him? Why her of all people choosing him? She kept answering in fragments. Months. Then a pause. Accidentally at first, she said. I remember leaning forward at that. Accidentally doesn't turn into messages like that, I said, pointing at the phone still on the table. She flinched, but didn't deny it. Then came the part one didn't expect. You don't understand how it felt lately, she said quietly. And that's when something dangerous happened in me, not rage yet, but something worse, curiosity mixed with humiliation. Because she wasn't talking like someone caught. She was talking like someone who believed her reasons mattered as much as the damage. And I realized I wasn't just losing her. I was being rewritten out of my own marriage in real time. She started explaining it like it had a beginning I was supposed to accept. Work pressure. Loneliness. Feeling unseen. The usual words people use when they want betrayal to sound like weather, something that just happens, not something chosen. And then she said something that still echoes in a twisted way. It wasn't about you at first. That line hit harder than anything else. Not because it excused anything, but because it removed me from the center of a story I thought I was the foundation of. I asked about Daniel again. About what exactly he was to her. She hesitated too long. Too long is an answer, I've learned. Someone who understood me, she said. I remember nodding slowly, like I was processing, but inside I felt something cracking in a way I couldn't fix by thinking harder. Because I had understood her too. For years. I had listened, supported, carried stress I never talked about. But apparently understanding wasn't enough. Or maybe it wasn't the kind she meant. Then I asked the question I didn't really want the answer to. Did you love him? She didn't answer immediately. And that silence said more than anything she could have spoken. When she finally answered, it wasn't a simple yes or no. It's complicated, she said. I almost laughed again, but it came out as air. Complicated. Like that word could cushion what I already knew. I stood up at that point. I couldn't stay seated anymore. The room felt too small, like the walls were leaning in to listen. She followed me with her eyes but didn't move. I didn't plan this, she added quickly, like that mattered. It just happened. That word again. Happened. I turned back to her. You don't just happen into months of lying. That was the first time she actually raised her voice. You think I wanted this? She said. You think I woke up and decided to ruin everything? And there it was, the shift. From confession to defense. From truth to justification. I remember feeling something strange in that moment. Not anger. Not yet. Disappointment so deep it felt physical, like my chest was collapsing inward. Because I realized she wasn't trying to undo what she did. She was trying to make me understand it so she wouldn't have to fully own it. The confrontation didn't stay contained in our kitchen for long. Once the words started spilling, they just kept going, like neither of us knew how to stop the momentum anymore. I asked her if anyone else knew. She said no at first, then corrected herself. A couple of friends. Not in detail, she added quickly, like that softened it. I asked about Daniel again. She said they weren't together anymore. That was the first detail that actually hurt in a different way. Not relief. Not comfort. Just aftermath I wasn't part of. So it's over, I said. She nodded. And you were going to just come back home like nothing happened? She didn't answer that. That silence felt like an answer again. I remember sitting back down because my legs suddenly felt useless. She stayed across from me, watching carefully now, like I was the unpredictable one. At some point she said, I was going to tell you. That sentence almost made me lose control completely. Because timing matters. And going to doesn't mean anything when the truth is already living in secret conversations and second phones and someone else's name on your lips at night. After that night, everything inside our house started feeling contaminated. Even normal sounds changed. The fridge opening felt louder. The kids laughing in another room felt distant, like it belonged to a different household entirely. I kept moving through routines out of habit, but I wasn't really present in any of them. Emily tried to act normal at first. Cooking dinner. Asking about school. Asking about my day like we were still two people with shared context instead of damage control. I couldn't respond properly. Every time she spoke, I kept hearing the other version of her, the one from the messages, the one saying she hated coming home after seeing him. At some point I asked her why Daniel of all people. That question stayed stuck in me. She said something about connection again. But what I heard was substitution. Not love. Not fate. Just escape. The worst part was how ordinary it all still looked from the outside. If someone walked into our house, they wouldn't know anything was broken. That's when I started realizing betrayal doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like dinner being served on time while everything meaningful has already ended. The days after felt like walking through something half-real. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings, and nobody around me knew that my entire life had split open. At home, Emily and I developed a strange silence. Not peaceful silence. Strategic silence. We spoke only when necessary, kids, schedules, bills. Everything else was avoided like it might trigger another collapse. But avoidance doesn't erase anything. It just delays it. At night I'd lie awake replaying details I wish I could unsee. The messages. Her tone. The way she didn't deny quickly enough. My brain kept trying to reorder events into something that made sense. There was one moment I kept circling back to, her saying Daniel. Understood her. I started wondering what that meant about me. Did I stop understanding her? Or was I never the person she needed understanding from? That thought didn't bring clarity. Just exhaustion. She eventually asked if we were going to try to fix it. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know what it even was anymore. Marriage felt like the wrong word for something that could contain both shared history and hidden lives at the same time. We tried therapy. Or at least we showed up like people who were trying. The first session felt surreal, like we were actors reading lines for a version of ourselves that still believed in repair. The therapist asked questions I didn't know how to answer without shaking. Emily talked more than I did. She kept focusing on what led to it. Like if we could trace the path carefully enough, we might find a point where everything could have been prevented. I couldn't stop thinking that there wasn't a single point. There were dozens. Small choices. Hidden conversations. Every step she took away from me that I never saw. After one session, the therapist asked me privately if I still wanted to stay. I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was messy. I still loved her in some shape I couldn't fully delete. But I also couldn't trust her version of reality anymore. At home, she tried harder. More openness, more reassurance, more explanations. But effort doesn't rebuild what secrecy already rewrote. And I started to understand that even if she stopped lying completely, I would never again be able to assume she wasn't. The decision didn't arrive like a dramatic moment. There was no final fight, no slammed doors, no clean ending. It came slowly, like erosion. One night the kids were asleep, and we were sitting in the living room pretending to watch something on TV neither of us was actually following. She asked me quietly if I had made a decision. I asked her what she thought I should decide. She said she didn't want to lose the family. That word, family, felt heavier than it used to. Like something we were holding together out of obligation rather than belief. I told her I didn't know how to rebuild something I couldn't recognize anymore. She started crying then, but it didn't move me the way it would have before. That scared me more than anything else. We didn't separate immediately. We stayed in the same house for a while, functioning like careful strangers. Sharing space, not lives. Eventually, I moved into the guest room. No announcement. No closure. Just a quiet rearrangement of where I slept in a house that no longer felt like mine. And that was the beginning of the end, even if either of us said it out loud. Months have passed since everything broke, but it still doesn't feel like something that belongs in the past. It feels suspended, like it's still happening in a slower timeline I can't fully exit. We co-parent now. Carefully. Politely. Like two people who survived the same accident but disagree on what caused it. Emily and I rarely talk about what happened anymore. When we do, it's brief, controlled, almost clinical. The second phone is gone, Daniel is gone, and yet none of that feels like it actually removed the weight of it. The strangest part is how life rebuilds around the damage without fixing it. The kids laugh. Work continues. Days stack up again. But trust doesn't quietly return just because time passes. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I missed earlier signs. Sometimes I wonder if I was blind or just unwilling to look. And sometimes I think about that moment in the kitchen, holding her phone, before everything collapsed. I wish I could say I learned something clean and meaningful from it. But the truth is messy. I learned that you can know someone deeply, share a life with them, and still not know what they're hiding until it's already too late to undo it.